Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. I've always had a bit of a passion for odd jobs. When I was a teenager, I discovered Craigslist, and everything just kind of snowballed from there. You wouldn't believe the kinds of things you can find on the internet. The kind of jobs you can secure without having to do any paperwork. Most of the time, the people hiring either don't want to be traceable by the government, or they're just far too desperate at that point to add any additional hoops to jump through. That was how I met Chelsea. It was actually a really funny story, perfect for telling at parties. It would be perfect for our wedding too, and for telling our kids. It would have been at least. We met because we had both been hired to come to this birthday party. A kid, turning 11. Neither of us fully knew what the job entailed when we agreed, which might have been a sign that we shouldn't have, but we were both informed we'd be paid handsomely, and that was all that either of us needed to hear. When we got there, Frank, a middle-aged guy with a salt and pepper beard who smelled strongly of patchouli and marinara sauce, informed us we were to get in a huge screaming match around the middle of the party. We were playing a couple from a few houses down who were really on the fritz, I guess. We weren't told why, just what to do. I'm still not sure why he wanted us to do that. I was hesitant. I wasn't much of an actor, but Chelsea, she threw herself into the role wholeheartedly. A couple of hours later, we were sitting on the curb a block away, and she was holding a bag of frozen carrots against my swollen cheekbone, and I was nursing a blunt, wincing at how my chocolate milk-soaked clothing stuck to my skin. We compared stories of our strangest jobs, our craziest experiences, and the worst things we'd ever done to make a couple of bucks. We both agreed that anything below a felony was fair game. But we gravitated towards weird, yet legal and harmless tasks. She had a passion for all of it that I'd never seen in anyone I'd ever met. She was really doing it for the experiences, not the money. She was a thrill seeker. I fell in love with her quickly, like getting hit over the head with a blunt object. It was aggressive and immediate. A couple of months later, we got a place together, and the rest was history. We fell into a nice domestic routine. She made me coffee in the morning and kissed my forehead when I walked into the kitchen. We took turns cooking dinner and doing the dishes, and we watched hours of reality television slop on our sofa that was just big enough for two. We talked about the future. We talked about a dog and 2 kids and a yard. It all just fell into place. Her friends liked me, and my friends liked her, and our families were the same. My mother became a little too obsessed with having a grandchild, and I had to beg her to stop asking Chelsea about her cycle. But none of them knew about our secret life, the jobs we did together when everyone went home. It was just for us, and it was exciting. This secret hobby that we shared. The first call from OEM came on a quiet Friday. Chelsea was at her job as a barista, and I was at home getting some cleaning done before having lunch with my parents. Like an old person, I was used to getting calls that didn't have identification, considering all my side jobs, so I didn't bat an eye at the no-caller ID on my screen. What was different, however, was the automated message that played as soon as I picked up the call. This call may be recorded for quality assurance and training purposes. Please state your first and last name and your date of birth. I frowned, tossing the rag I'd been cleaning the stove with onto the kitchen counter. Julian Rains, May 14th, 1999. There was a silence, and then a beep. Then a man spoke, non-automated this time. "Hello, Mr. Rains. I've been informed you might be looking for a job. When Chelsea got home, I was waiting for her on the couch. She came up behind me, cupped my face in her hands, and kissed the top of my head." "Hey, babe," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. "How was work?" "Exhausting." She slumped over the back of the couch, smushing the cushions. "But I got this crazy voicemail." The facility was in what looked, from the outside, like a dilapidated warehouse. The man who picked us up in a long black car was very quiet, answering our questions in single-word responses and keeping his eyes on the road. Chelsea and I kept giving each other small glances and squeezing each other's hands the entire way there. A man greeted us at the car door, opening it for us with a smile. He was tall and thin, and he wore a crisp suit with his dark hair slicked back, not a strand askew. "Mr. and Mrs. Rains, I presume?" Chelsea looked down shyly. I was surprised. She was never shy. But this situation definitely felt more professional than what we were used to. "We aren't married." Oh, I'm sorry." The man tapped his forehead with the palm of his hand, good-naturedly. "I'm so sorry. Miss Sutherland." "Miss Sutherland, of course." He reached out to shake her hand, and then mine, eager. "My name is Malcolm Kessler. You can just call me Kessler. Would you like to know what you're doing here?" We let Kessler lead us into the building. On the inside, it looked far less run down. We were greeted with long white hallways and bustling professionals holding coffees and clipboards, wearing matching white lab coats. "Is this like a hospital?" Chelsea asked, gazing around in awe. I took her hand again and she gave it a squeeze. "No, not a hospital, although there are medical professionals here, and we do certainly have access to those kinds of tools." He offered us a sly grin. We entered a room with a metal table and 4 chairs, and not much else. A woman with her hair tied up in a tight bun came in, placed a stack of papers on the table, and scurried away. Kessler gestured for us to take a seat. "This," he said slowly, looking from me to Chelsea, and back again. "This is OEM. Do you know what that stands for?" He waited for us to shake our heads before continuing. "This is the Office of Enhanced Methods." I blinked at him, the white fluorescent lights making my eyes burn. "What does that mean?" "I'm glad you asked." Kessler leaned back in his seat, folding his hands in his lap. "Essentially, here at OEM, we test torture methods. See what works, see what doesn't, see what we need to change or scale back on. You know." I could feel Chelsea looking at me. I looked back. I couldn't quite read her expression, but somehow I still could get the gist. "Is this, a government project?" she asked, her eyes still locked on mine, and her brows furrowing. Kessler chuckled. "You could say that. So why do you need us?" I asked him, even though I felt I might know the answer, finally looking away from my girlfriend and back at the man in front of us. Kessler sighed, leaning forward again, resting his elbows on the table. He had quite a sharp face, but it managed. to feel charming and welcoming purely from his expression. I wondered if he'd practiced that. "I'll level with you," he said, quieter than before. "We need volunteers, but finding volunteers for something like this is difficult. That's why now we're looking for people like you, people who are interested in doing odd jobs like this one, and we're offering a large amount of compensation." I pressed my lips together, searching his face for any sign of deception or exaggeration. I found none. I glanced back at Chelsea, who was looking at the stack of paperwork. "How much compensation?" I asked finally, when it became clear that no one else was going to say it. I expected Kessler to laugh. He didn't. "Are you two looking to get married?" I felt the room heat up. Truthfully, I had bought the ring a month ago. I was just waiting for the right time, and a time when we could properly plan for a wedding without the stress of becoming bankrupt for it. Yes, I mean, eventually. "Have you seen how much those venues cost these days?" Kessler raised his eyebrows sympathetically, leaning even closer to us. "Not to mention a honeymoon. Are you looking to have kids, start a family, send those kids to college, grow old and retire?" The man actually reached out, actually took my hand in one of his and Chelsea's in his other. I felt like the air in the room was being sucked out of it. "I'm going to be honest with you two. I am not going to mince words. It's tough out there, right now. I could make it so you never have to worry about money again." He left us in the room to let us talk alone, and I could have sworn I heard the lock click behind him. But to be fair, I was feeling pretty jumpy by that point. Chelsea and I sat for a moment in silence. "This is a lot," she muttered, running her fingers through her hair. "This place is crazy." I reached over to flip through the paperwork, chewing on my bottom lip. I saw words like non-disclosure agreement, liability, medical care. I put the paperwork back down and took her hand again. "It's a lot of money." He seemed serious. "Would we be considered, like, war criminals if we took part in this?" She laughed, but I could tell she was anxious, shrugged slowly. She rubbed at her face with her free hand, a nervous habit of hers. I reached over and tucked some hair behind her ear, smiling. She smiled back apprehensively. There was something neither of us was saying, something neither of us wanted to point out. How bad was the job to offer that amount of compensation? Still, there was a buzz between us. This was what we did. We signed up for strange things for the experiences. Chelsea lived for things like this. I think I knew the second we got there that she would end up wanting to do it. When Kessler came back, I stood up, pushing my chair back and wiping my sweaty hands on my jeans. "What kind of torture are we talking about?" His smile was wide. "I can show you now, if you'd like," he explained, as he led us back down the hall, guiding us into a different room that was essentially the exact same as the one we had just been in, but with more cameras mounted on the walls and with different chairs. I winced a little when I saw the wrist and ankle restraints attached to the sterile metal frame. "Everything we do here stays within these walls," he told us, gesturing for us to take a seat. Chelsea and I shared a look, then obeyed. Communication-wise, but also physically, we will do nothing to permanently damage you, and we have medical staff on site for any treatment you may need. As if on cue, a man in one of the lab coats bustled into the room, pushing a cart. He began strapping down our wrists, leaving our legs unrestrained. "Everything is voluntary," Kessler continued. "Nothing will happen to you without your explicit consent, although we may need to withhold some details in order to get the most accurate read on your reactions. You can leave or discontinue your contracts at any time." The man in the lab coat started putting on medical gloves. I swallowed hard. What is he going to do? Kessler nodded at the man who procured a syringe from his cart, examining the needle carefully and then picking up a little glass bottle to draw from. "This is just, let's call it a sample. This is something we've been working on for a while. It's already been tested many times with a high success rate." I wondered what a high success rate in this context was. A large sum of pain? The right amount of screaming? Usually we'd probably hook you up to various brainwave sensors, but we'll start light today. The doctor, was he a doctor, approached Chelsea, who squirmed anxiously. He wiped her arm with an alcohol swab and began feeling around for a good vein. I watched her, trying to look encouraging when her eyes met mine. "This is a sort of liquid electrocution, per se." Before either of us could reply to that, the doctor was inserting the needle into Chelsea's arm and pushing down on the plunger. I watched her body seize up, her eyes going wide and glassy. She was perfectly still for a moment, save for her mouth falling open and her entire face going slack. And then she began to twitch and spasm, her limbs jerking with no control. Then she screamed, a gurgling, horrifying sound, and I was struck with panic. I was so distracted, I barely felt the needle sliding into my own arm, and then it felt like I was being set on fire. We didn't go back to that place for a couple of months. Kessler told us to take our time, to think about it, as he handed us a tall stack of dollar bills. The feeling of the money almost bulging out of my pocket almost made up for the pain. He had told the truth. It didn't last. It felt like the effects of the injection lasted an hour, but we were told it had only been a few minutes before it wore off. I expected to be weak leaving the facility, and prepared myself to be embarrassed to handle it worse than my girlfriend did. But the feeling faded fast. In fact, I almost felt more alive. We were given a brief interview where a younger man scribbled extensive notes, and then we were free to go. The first thing Chelsea said to me when we got outside was, "What the rush?" Still, we waited a while. It felt like the next step in our odd jobs hobby to make this a regular thing, like something a little bit depraved. It was dystopian. It was strange and scary. Even though the sensation was gone, I could vividly remember what the injection had done to me, how it had torn through my veins, how I had wondered if I was dying. And that was supposed to just be a sample. But eventually neither of us could stay away. The money was good, beyond good. At first we kept it a secret from each other, as if we were doing something bad. She would head off to work, and I would drive to the warehouse. They would inject me, feed me things that made me sick, toss me around, even beat me. And then I would drive home, still reeling and sore. Chelsea started acting strange, staying up after I went to bed. But I couldn't exactly call her out on it, because I was being strange too. Neither of us wanted to put any pressure on the other, I guess, and I don't think either of us liked the idea of the other getting tortured. It was all but confirmed in my mind that we were both doing the same thing when I caught her coming through the front door at almost 3 a.m., rubbing at her temple. like she had a horrible migraine. I was sitting on the couch, reading a book, waiting for her. She stopped cold, her eyes going wide. I couldn't help but chuckle. "Cheating on me?" I asked. She laughed, plopping down next to me on the couch. "Not exactly." I pulled her to me, and she rested her head on my shoulder. "Let's just do it together, okay? From now on, let's just go together." I waited for an answer, but after a minute, all I got was a snore. We went together the next weekend. Kessler greeted us, patting each of us on our backs cheerfully. "Great to see you two together again. The work you both have been doing here is just fantastic." Chelsea and I eyed each other, and she gave me a little punch on the arm. I grinned at her. "I have something different for you two today, now that you're here together, if you're up for it." My smile faded a little, twisting into mild concern. I licked my lips. "Different how?" He waved me off, guiding us into one of the rooms. The same chairs greeted us with their cuffs and restraints. A doctor was already inside, toying with some kind of strap. It looked sort of like a headband. "We'd like to try something more psychological than you're used to." I stopped in my tracks. Kessler and Chelsea both turned to face me, their eyebrows raising in sync. Psychological torture? I was getting vivid images in my head, all of the psychological horror movies I'd ever seen rushing back to me. Physical pain was one thing, but sanity was delicate, something that shouldn't be played with. Kessler approached me, placing his hands on each of my shoulders, and offered me a reassuring smile. "Think about it, Mr. Raines," he said, his voice kind. "It will be a brief test. It'll only last around 30 seconds. Like I've said, nothing will leave this facility, and we have professionals to assess your mental state directly afterwards. 30 seconds for enough money to buy a used car." I worried my lips together, the fear I'd had in the past creeping back in. If it wasn't dangerous, why was it worth so much? Worth more than we'd been paid for anything before. "Come on, Jules." Chelsea smiled at me from behind him. She didn't look afraid, and it soothed me a little. "We'll do it together." I nodded reluctantly. Almost as soon as my chin raised to do so, the doctor was slipping the headband on, 2 metal plates digging into my forehead. I felt my muscles tense up. We took our seats, and Chelsea reached over to grab my hand. They didn't strap us down this time, which I hardly thought about until after it was too late. The doctor put Chelsea's headband on, too, and she made a face at me, which made me bite back a laugh. "Ready?" Kessler asked. Then he nodded at the doctor, who pressed something on what looked like a keyboard, and Julie started to scream. The second he touched the thing, she was screaming. It wasn't like any scream I had ever heard before. Not like the one from the first time we'd been here, and not in any horror movie. Certainly never in real life. It felt like my eardrums were bursting, and it only grew louder and more shrill. It was desperate. It was beyond torture, beyond pain, beyond anything a human could possibly endure. I imagined hell. I imagined that souls being dragged to damnation might sound something like that scream. I wasn't even religious. She squeezed my hand, and I felt my bones cracking. "Chelsea? Chelsea?" I rocketed out of my seat, trying to shake her, trying to ignore the searing pain. She wouldn't let go of my hand. Couldn't. Her eyes were wide open and dead, looking right at me but not seeing anything. Still, tears streamed from them, more tears than I'd ever seen anyone cry. I whipped back around. The doctor was typing urgently at his computer, and Kessler was staring, his hands out, and his eyes moving rapidly back and forth, like he was in shock. "Jesus Christ, do something!" I screamed. "Fucking do something!" Chelsea was gasping now, a ragged sound that bounced around in my head. It felt like I could hear nothing but that horrible wet gasp, just dead air, and her throat clawing for breath, drool seeping from her mouth and down her chin. Finally, I ripped the headband off her. Instantly, she went slack, letting go of my hand. The room was silent for a moment. Then Kessler muttered something to the other man, and the doctor rushed out the door. "Chelsea? Chelsea, baby, are you okay?" I kneeled in front of her, rubbing her knee. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't move. For a second, I wondered if she was dead. "Please answer me." Right when I was about to check her pulse, her head turned. She wasn't screaming anymore, but her eyes were just as dead as they had been before when they met mine. They didn't even look like her eyes anymore. She opened her mouth, and out of it came a horrible whispery sound, like she'd forgotten how to use her tongue. I leaned in closer, trying to smile at her weakly. "What is it, honey?" "Please," she gasped. "No more." I felt hot. I felt like I had a horrible fever. I reached up, touched her wet face. "It's over, baby. No more. It's over." She stared at me, if you could call it that. She wasn't in her body anymore. This was something else. She twitched. Just kill me. I turned back to look at Kessler. He looked just as shocked as I did, anxiously adjusting his tie. For a long moment we met eyes, and I knew what he was thinking. Something had gone horribly, unbelievably wrong here, and he didn't know how to fix it. The next few hours were a horrible blur. I remember doctors rushing around, wheeling Chelsea out of the room despite my pleas to know where they were going, to let me go with them. I sat alone in the cold, sterile room, her scream echoing around in my head. I cried. I begged the cameras in the corners of the room. I banged my head against the table. Someone came in and bandaged up my broken hand, but no one would tell me anything. It felt like days that I was in there. Honestly, it could have been. When the door finally opened again and Kessler stepped through it, I couldn't even feel relieved. I just felt broken. "Where is she?" I croaked, raising my head. "Is she okay?" He said nothing, just sat down in front of me. He was back to business. The horrified expression I'd last seen his face completely wiped away, although I could have sworn his face was a little pale. He took an envelope out of his pocket and placed it on the metal table between us. "Miss Sutherland is right outside. She's unharmed and feeling fine." I choked out a sob. I couldn't help it. I hid my face in my hands. Kessler cleared his throat and continued, "You are to take this envelope. Inside is a check for $700,000. One of our drivers is going to take you to the emergency room, where you will have your hand properly treated. Any further medical bills will be completely covered by us. You are to do this and then go home and never return here. Do you understand?" I looked up at him, and I nodded. I was angry. I wanted to yell, demand answers, threaten to sue, but I was far too exhausted for any of that. I just wanted to see Chelsea. I just wanted to go home. Kessler nodded, his mouth pressed into a thin line. We at OEM are terribly ashamed about what took place today. Please accept our deepest condolences. Something about that rubbed me the wrong way, made my skin prickle, but my mind was numb. I just nodded again, taking the envelope and shoving it into my pocket. Chelsea was just outside, like he'd said, and she smiled when she saw me. I gathered her in my arms and squeezed, breathing in the scent of her hair, kissing the side of her neck. Thank God you're okay. Hey, don't cry. She pulled back, kissing my cheek and wiping away my tears. I'm more than okay, baby. What a rush. A laugh burst out of me like an uncontrollable cough. You're a psychopath. You like it. As promised, we were taken to the hospital, where I was, put in a cast. My hand was broken in 3 different places. As Chelsea sat with me while they examined it, a horrible, anxious feeling crept over me. When I looked at her, all she did was smile. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, white spots drifting across my vision, my hand throbbing dully on my chest. Chelsea's back pressed against the side of my arm was the only thing that made me feel any calmer. I turned to look at the back of her head, chewing on my lip. The room felt too quiet, too dark. After spending so long in that bright, sterile room, I was restless. Chelsea, I whispered. Are you awake? She said nothing. She wasn't snoring, but I swore I could hear her heart beating. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I sighed. What did you feel when it was happening? I knew she wouldn't respond, but I asked anyway. I needed to talk, even if it was just to myself. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I felt her shift a little, her back moving with each of her breaths. Her heartbeat began to speed up. Only then did I begin to wonder why I could hear it at all. And so loud, I sat up a little, leaning on my elbows. I stroked her hair. Hey, baby, are you okay? No answer. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. Suddenly I had that feeling. I had that feeling children get at night. When they become positive there's someone in the closet or just outside their bedroom door, someone they don't know. Panic raced through me, and whether it was rational or not, I had to see her face. I had to be sure she was alive, and she was herself, and she was real. I reached over and took her arm, rolling her towards me. Oh, Chelsea's eyes were wide open, bloodshot, and my heart jumped into my throat when I realized it hadn't been her heartbeat that I had been hearing. It had been her gasping for air, her throat closing and opening again rapidly, swallowing and heaving dryly in the dark, like an animal about to throw up. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I shook her awake, sitting straight up in the bed. She gasped, blinking at me almost sleepily, rubbing at her eyes. Julian. Her voice was raspy, tired, and dry, but otherwise normal. I flicked on the bedside lamp, breathing hard. Babe, what's wrong? I shook my head. I couldn't look at her, couldn't breathe. I felt her wrap her arms around me, shushing me gently and stroking my hair. You were... Shh. It's okay. It's okay now, Jules. I'm okay. Just a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. I knew it wasn't. After that, my girlfriend was different. She wasn't herself. I tried to go back to normal. She certainly tried to. She went to work like before, saw her friends, and watched television with me on our couch. But it didn't feel like she was really there anymore. She didn't sleep much at all, and when she did, it was strange and restless. I more than once caught her sleeping with her eyes wide open, just like that first night. Once I asked her what her dreams had been like recently, and she hesitated before telling me, "You know how when meat is fresh and the muscles are still alive, so they move and squirm even though the animal is dead?" She smiled and ruffled my hair. That's what the backs of my eyelids looked like. The worst part was how normal she pretended to be, how fine she told me she felt, how she kissed me like always, and how she tried to joke, but it never came out quite right. I reached my limit one night a month later when I got home after having a drink with some friends. The house was completely dark, completely silent, completely still. The second I opened the door, I felt it, the unexplainable terror. Lucky there was a man in the closet. It didn't feel right in there. Nothing felt like it was in the right place, even though I knew it must have been. Everything just felt wrong. "Chelsea?" I called out quietly, shrugging off my jacket, wet from the rain. "Are you awake, honey?" No answer. I went to go upstairs when I saw her. She was down our hallway. Her head was half poking out around the corner, only her eyes showing in the darkness, wide open, staring at me, but not seeing me. She started to scream, and it was even worse not to be able to see her mouth. She screamed in short bursts, like a panting dog, the blood-curdling sounds jolting out of her. Fight or flight kicked in. I turned around and walked right back out the door, closing it behind me. I walked until I was across the street before looking back at the house. She was in our bedroom window, the lights turned on, illuminating her silhouette. I watched her rear back and slam her head into the glass once, then again, something dark and liquid trickling down to the frame. The paramedics had to tie her down to keep her from thrashing or hurting herself. I watched as they took her away, begging them to kill her. I tried to call OEM, but all I got was a message that the number had been disconnected. I drove back there while she was still in the hospital, but there was nothing left but an empty warehouse. When I picked her up, she was completely normal again, the only proof of the episode being the stitches on her forehead. It was that day, the day I picked her up, when I felt completely broken down and helpless, that I started to hear her voice. "Honey?" I looked over at my girlfriend, or what my girlfriend had become. She was staring out the window, smiling peacefully. "What was that?" She glanced at me, her smile widening. "Nothing, Julian." I didn't say anything. I turned back to the road, convinced I was just losing my mind. I had to be. It would make sense. But then I heard it again. "Julian, open your eyes, honey. It's okay." Jesus Christ, Kessler, would you take that thing off him? I think he's had enough. Story number 2. I'm a 20-year-old who started working at my hometown's local grocery store in late July of this year. Compared to my last 2 jobs as a student worker at my college's dining facility and as a table busser, food server for a steakhouse, it's a lot better than both of them. And it even improves on the issues I had with those old jobs. At my first job, I got paid way too infrequently and never enough. I used to joke that I got paid the bare minimum wage because I was only paid $9.50 an hour, and I could only work 10 hours a week due to my class schedule and tolerance for stress. The other issue is that there were hardly enough workers. This wasn't an exact issue at my second job at the steakhouse. It was a small place that was only open past 5 until around 9. So, the amount of customers there wouldn't be too overwhelming as long as there wasn't some big party going on. I'd get paid by the hour and by tips, and every Thursday I'd be paid between $90 to over $200. But that was usually due to how many shifts I was given that week. Some weeks, I was given no shifts. But at the grocery store, I'd be paid $15 an hour, have multiple shifts that were at least 4 hours, and rarely are there too little amount of workers for closing. And you know, I really like working at the grocery store compared to my last 2 jobs. It's a 20-25 minute walk to my ma's place where I live, so I'm getting exercise. I feel like I'm being really helpful when customers ask me where certain things are, like where the eggs are. And some tasks take up almost the entire shift, so I'm not feeling too overwhelmed by the chores I need to accomplish until we're closing. And this week, it was more of the same. I work at the meat department of the store, and yesterday, or Thursday the 28th as I'm writing this while processing it, was restocking packaged products in the packaged meat section. This section is where we keep our hot dogs, breakfast meat, lunch meat, other meats, and a few other types of products like mac and cheese or mashed potatoes from the wall of cardboard boxes, all placed on a green U-boat that I pulled from the cooler. I would open a box's plastic seal with my box cutter and then find the place where the product needed to go. Occasionally, the incorrect products are placed on the U-boat, and on Thursday, it was a package of pepperoni that I had never seen sold before that looked out of place. The meat was in a thin black package with a plastic shine to it. The thick circle slices of the pink pepperoni had these tiny red and green specks inside, which I assumed were similar to the olive leaf bologna that we sell. In fact, I think it was the same company that made this type of pepperoni. Not sure. My memory gets hazy with those types of details. I took out my Zebra device from my back pocket. A Zebra, by the way, is a brand of handheld computer device that we use to keep track of products and complete other tasks. It's really useful to have around. I scanned its barcode so that I could see if this product even belonged to this section. We do store pepperoni, but usually not in the glass door refrigerators. Yeah, I'm just as confused as to why pepperoni doesn't need refrigeration. And this product looked like it required refrigeration, and when the screen for the product appeared, it said it belonged to Bunker 999. Now the meat department only has 4 bunkers, which we use to store extra products that we didn't have space for on the walls, or items that are on sale. Seeing that number was both confusing and funny. I showed it to my coworker, Stephen, who then smiled and said, "Bunker 999. There is no such thing." I later found one of my department managers, Joss, and asked him about it. He frowned. Seeing the bunker number likely just means that we can put the item in any space we can find space for it. So it's not a case of us receiving a product meant for a different store. I was only asking because last month my older co-worker George discovered a package of Meyer sausage rolls. It was a funny situation, as I didn't think that the truck company that gave us our food would send us products from a totally different store. Even funnier is that George happily took 2 of them home. Joss raised his shoulders in a shrug. Couldn't be. I've never seen a zebra mention Bunker 999 before. Joss let me be, and I did as I was asked to do. When I got back to my main task of unloading the U-boat, I eventually discovered yet another product for Bunker 999. This time, it was a box full of bratwurst, smoked cheddar bratwurst by Fredericks. For some reason I recalled how if you tap a bunker's number, it would give you a map of directions on where you could find that bunker. I didn't use it very often, as there were enough labels inside the store to help me find products for customers. I know my memory isn't perfect, but it is still great at remembering that kind of detail. I wish my memory failed me because of what happened after I tapped on the bunker's number. The map directed me to the back area of the store, where only employees could go. Products are stuffed almost everywhere except the path set between 2 yellow lines. This was meant for the fire exit, which I followed for as long as the zebra's route allowed me to, and the zebra had led me to a fire exit, the first one that caught my eye when I started working here. What had caught my eye in particular was the pale yellow masking tape that spelled "Do Not Open." One of the department managers had explained to me that the dramatic sign was there because if that door opened, the alarm would go off. My curiosity should have ended there if the zebra hadn't been leading to this door. And one other thing, I knew what should be behind this door. This fire exit was inside where we receive our product shipments from the trucks. It's also where we throw bags of garbage in the trash chute, which was only a couple of feet right of the exit door. But to the exit door's left was one of those metal doors that pull up. And I've seen what's on the other side of that door. It's a concrete walkway with a metal fence, preventing someone from falling into the small pond that's just behind the store. So the zebra pointing me to the fire exit was even more bizarre, as why would the door just point me to the outside? I don't blame myself for impulsively entering. I just wish I hadn't. Behind that fire exit door, which I immediately shut behind me, was a long concrete hallway into shadows. I didn't hear any noise ahead of me or behind me. Just to be sure my ears weren't tricking me, I pulled open the door again to see if the fire alarm hadn't rang. It was quiet, aside from the loud hum of some machine in the background. I closed the door and looked at the zebra for both the time and what direction I needed to go. It was only 5:01 p.m., just a minute over an hour since I had begun working, and the direction the zebra was pointing me in was forward. I really should have thought to go to my department manager and show him this. I don't know why I didn't. I just felt compelled to go down there. I'm blaming it on my fascination with adventure. It got me lost in a forest while hiking in the wilderness once, and it was going to drag me through what I can only describe as bizarre. Once everything became pitch black in my vision, and the difference between having my eyes open and closed was minimal, a pair of glass doors slid open. I was at the store's entrance. I took a few steps forward, hearing the doors close behind me, as I took in what the many glass panes showed me. Outside, there was nothing. Absolute nothing. No cars, no parking lot, no street lamps, no trees, grass, or other stores that should neighbor my workplace. I should have been hit with some sense of horror, but I was rather awestruck by this bizarreness. Then a familiar happy tune began to play, and my amazed look turned into one of disgust. It was that stupid earworm song that I hated to hear the most whenever I was working. I Want Candy. Not the original version of the song. It was that cover that played in the teaser trailer for Illumination's Hop movie. I cringe every time I think of that movie, especially the scene where Evie and the Cyclops actor, whose name escapes me at the moment, were put into the awkward situation of having to sing that song. I hate it, and that should have been the key indicator that I needed to leave. And I could have. I would later figure out the doors can open and close, regardless if you're entering or exiting. But we'll get to that part later. Right now, I had entered the lifeless store. No one was there. It was dead quiet aside from the song playing. It was weird not hearing the subtle buzz of cartwheels moving over the smooth floor of the grocery store or someone's kid blabbering loudly some distance away. Even weirder to hardly see anyone. All the self-checkout computers were still on, even the computers in the regular checkout aisles. Occasionally, I'd spot a random cart full of an assortment of items. The first one I found was near the bakery, which was between the meat department at the back of the store and the deli, which was closer to the front. The cart had a variety of items, but mostly toys, bags of candy, and decorative materials. If a person were still driving this cart, I'd make the assumption that they were preparing for a birthday party. The next cart I saw, I didn't get a good look at. It was in the alcohol section, and I think I saw a six-pack of beer in the otherwise empty cart. There were a few more carts as I wandered the place, but one that stuck out to me was a cart that had fallen over. Its contents were basic groceries like bread, yogurt, orange juice, and other things. But they were all on the floor. But nobody was there. So who knocked all these carts down? My zebra let out a notification whistle, and when I pulled it from my back pocket to examine the device, I tapped the bell symbol to look for the notification. Except nothing was there. I frowned at the oddity and closed out of notifications, returning to the map. I was being led into the same direction I had followed just before coming to this version of the grocery store, and I followed that path again. Found myself in that dark hallway again, and found myself in the store's entrance again. Except this time, a different song was playing. This song wasn't quite as annoying as the first one. The issue was that I didn't know the name of it. I mainly listened to movie soundtracks. Think Oppenheimer or Godzilla -1. All I could tell was that it was some sort of upbeat punk rock music. But I recognized it. It played during store hours. When I walked into the store itself, things were slightly different. I think the color of everything was just slightly more saturated. Like there was this orange that I saw, rather than it being the exact color of orange that oranges are. It was a little more red than what you would expect. Even my pale skin tone seemed a little more saturated, like I had gotten a mix of a sunburn and a tan. Everything under the light seemed a little more saturated. Other than that, not much else had changed, except for the carts. There were more of them, and 2 more of them were pushed over. Some of the grocery items were torn open in strange ways. A red and white can of whipped cream had a chunk of its side ripped off. All the cream had been drained from it, but the substance was nowhere near the scene. Something had likely drunk it from the torn can. A jug of chocolate milk was torn up the same way, with another similar-sized chunk of its side torn open. Except that droplets of chocolate milk were found near the scene. All of that was near the dairy aisle, and the next item I found was a torn case of skin-on, bone-in chicken legs. Except, funnily, the chicken meat had no skin or bones, just torn-up meat. I nervously laughed to myself before moving on to where the zebra wanted me to go. God, I should have left by that point. For the next hour and a half, I kept wandering through the same simple maze that was slowly changing. If it took me 5 minutes to get from the front of the store to the back without wandering, maybe 10. If I had wandered, then I must have gone through the store at most a dozen times. The only consistent variables of each version of the store were that a new song would be playing on a loop. Carts would be randomly set about, some of which were disturbed by something. The lighting would be slightly changed, and the one variable that I hadn't noticed until now was that the days had reversed. I only noticed in the now pink light of the 12th or 13th store when I looked at the screen display in the service area of my department. This was where we sold fish, chicken, cow, and pig meat to customers, and the screen display would show the weight and price of whatever they were asking for. It could also tell the date and time, and while the time was 1.5 hours past, when I started looking for Bunker 999, the date wasn't correct. It was August 16th, 2025, 12 days before what should be August 28th. It seems that every time I pass through a fire exit door, cross through the hallway, and enter a new grocery store, time would have reverted to 1 day. I don't know why I kept going forward. The intrigue, I guess. The mystery I was digging into was fascinating. A fire exit door that has a hallway with no light, which then leads to a lifeless grocery store that has another fire exit door that leads to a similar place, and I'm being guided by a Zebra device. It made me wonder what it would be like if there was a fire, and everyone passed through that door. I giggled a little at the idea as it kept returning to my mind. The pure panic of a coworker escaping their blazing demise only to enter both pure confusion and awe at entering a grocery store very akin to their old workplace, yet very different at the same time. 2 more hours would pass with little change. I didn't take as much time to explore this time, so I think I entered my 36th store when something new happened. The differences were less subtle this time around. Shopping carts were everywhere, and they were all tipped over with their contents on the ground. A sweetly foul smell sucker punched my nostrils and immediately made me gag. I have a particularly sensitive sense of smell, so this was a new kind of hell for me. And looking back, I'm surprised that I didn't gag at the smell of the chicken meat robbed of its bones and skin, as it seemed to have been out for some time. I should have turned back, but when I looked to the exit, I saw someone who was also wearing the same blue grocery store apron I had on, running through the door I had entered through just prior. I didn't even hear him walk past me, and I was confused as to why he was running in the first place. Was he scared of seeing me, or because of something else chasing him? Well, I would learn the reason, but only because fear saved my ass. Somehow, I continued forward. I'm wondering if I just felt compelled to do so because of what I'd find was luring me with the zebra. The music eventually changed from something you'd listen to on the radio to classical music. I heard Ave Maria playing through the speakers as I walked into the 60th store. The audio's quality was in poor shape, as it sounded so grainy. This static warped the songs, continuing just as the smell got worse. I don't know why I kept going on. Things seemed to get worse with each store I walked into. And God, I should have left by the 99th store. There were these flies, these giant black flies. They were so fat and slow-moving, yet somehow fast enough to avoid my hands swatting at them. They appeared as black dots in the super bright light of this store. They were feeding on the sickeningly sweet-smelling meat and fruit that had fully decayed in this store. They even took small bites out of me, and their quick nibbles surprisingly stung, but they mostly avoided me. I wasn't dead to them yet. I hate bugs and all those creepy, crawly things. I can tolerate spiders, though. And God, this place needs spiders. A whole army of them. Big ones. Big spiders to eat the big flies. It would be good to have some big spiders, or maybe some hungry frogs. Frogs would have been good, too. They love eating bugs, especially the big ones. Any insectivore that liked flies would have been great. Their thick buzzing clouded the already shitty quality of the classical song that was playing, and nothing but buzzing could be heard in the back area near the fire exit. This was because the back area near that exit is where we also stored extra products, ones that didn't need to be in a fridge, and they had all rotten, and the flies craved their rot. I didn't like how their tiny, dirty bodies flicked against my skin, occasionally taking small, painful nibbles from there that itched like hell. Finally found safety behind the fire exit hallway. I took a moment to just lean against the door and take a breather. You should listen to your conscience and go back, someone had said to me. Just ahead of me, mostly cast in shadows, was a man, about a few inches taller than me. Mind you, I'm 6 feet tall, so he was about 6'3", maybe. I couldn't see his face, but I could tell he was older based on the weight of his voice. "There is nothing down there worth finding," he said to me. "You know you want to go back." "You don't know that." I lied. I was too unnerved by what he said to admit he's right. The stranger said nothing more and took one step forward. I could see him more clearly with the help of the light that shined through the door cracks. He was covered head to toe in bruises and markings. His blue eyes shimmered in the light, not like pools of water, but like cobalt dust sprinkled on a steel sheet. It was strange to look at as he passed by me and walked into the 99th store. I wonder if he was even human to begin with. I mean, he did look human physically. Sounded like one, too. But was he human? I entered the 100th store, and it was like I had entered the very first grocery store. Not the one I used the fire exit door to get to, but the one I walked to every day. The only difference is that the classical music was still playing. There were abandoned carts at random places, and there were no people. Other than that, everything was fine. And when I entered the 101st store, everything looked a little more saturated, but a bit darker, too. Like the lights had been dimmed slightly, and I got this feeling that from the shadows, the eyes of something were attached to me. There was a familiar pattern with these stores. With every new store I entered, a new song would play. The lighting and colors would be adjusted. Abandoned carts would decorate the place with some tipped over and eaten from. A day would go back, and at the near end, a population of mutant flies would grow. And by the 100th store, everything would reset to relative normalness, minus the day going backwards thing, until I entered the next store, where the pattern repeats itself. But now there was 3 new variables that I was noticing. With every new 100 stores, it would be just a little darker than before. And with every next 100 stores, I'd see more people running for the exit out of here. Some encouraging me to escape. And of course there was the 3rd variable. As with the next 100 stores, the feeling of being watched would become much more apparent. I should have listened to those workers. I closed the door to the 899th store and walked down the black hallway. Entering the 900th store, it was almost pitch black, but someone blinded me with their flashlight. "Go back home." "Henry," someone told me, while everyone is still there. I almost asked how she knew my name, but then I remembered that I was still wearing my work apron, which had my name tag pinned on it. My eyes adjusted to the light, and I saw a woman past her 50s, sitting in one of those rolling chairs we have at the main office. She looked tired, really tired, and she had the same look in her eyes as that one man from the 100th store's hallway did. The iris of her eyes looked like cobalt dust sprinkled over a steel sheet. I looked at her apron, and her name tag read the name Gabriella. "Look, Gabriella, I came all this way. I'm not going back." I said to her, "Look at your device. What's today's date, is it?" I pulled out my phone, but she shook her head no. "Your zebra. Take out the zebra." I pulled my zebra from my back pocket and looked at it. It was 2026. The rules of time have changed again from this point on. Rather than 1 day backward, it's 365 days forward. And that change is permanent until you leave here. What do you mean? I could take a guess at what she meant. I just didn't want to believe the implication. "Check your phone." I pulled it from my front pocket and pressed its on button. I read the date on my screen. It matched the one on my zebra. 1 year pushed forward by the store was 1 year pushed forward outside the store. I really should have left the store at that point. I don't know why I didn't run out the door. Every part of me was screaming that I had to go back. Everyone I cared about would be missing me. Not only that, but I would have missed out on so much. I was planning to see a friend that I hadn't talked to in a while. Another friend and I were going to watch the new Five Nights at Freddy's movie coming out this year. My stepdad and I were going to practice driving so that I could finally get my driver's license. And yet, for some reason, I said, "What if..." I continued forward and found Bunker 999. You don't want to do that, and you know that you don't. What will I find? Nothing of value. But nothing. Go back, young man. Live a life to be lived well. Don't waste time here. There is no secret to be found, only guilt to be given to you. I had somehow convinced myself that was a lie. Against Gabriella's warnings, I marched off into my own hell. When I entered the 901st store, something was different. I knew it was dead quiet. There were no carts with groceries abandoned on the sales floor, and I knew something was wrong with the lights. All the bulbs were pitch blacks, and yet the place was fully lit. It was like the light was coming from the wrong places. What should be the darkest area of a shelf was instead the brightest part. Outside, instead of a black abyss, it was white, pure white, like snow reflecting sunlight. It almost hurt to stare at it for too long. I could feel my mind breaking down as I passed through the next 99 exit doors. I felt compelled to go forward, but the knowledge that years were going to pass outside the store was tearing me up. I wanted to go back. No, I wanted to run back. Run back and never look back. Maybe run just fast enough to spend time with the people I care about and have fun with them. I wanted to go home and play video games, eat junk food, write, watch films, and not be stuck here wasting my time walking to the next exit. Yet I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop walking down the hallways, through the store, through the exit door, and into the hallway again. I think at some point, I had started crying. With each new store, things grew more bizarre. I could hear the slightest of movements in the strange shadows that were projected from the light bulbs. Oh yeah, the light bulbs create shadows now. It was like the rule of, in the absence of light, there is only darkness, was switched, and the darkness was slowly prevailing. Over the stores, it was impossible. All of this was impossible, and that fascination had me by the throat. Maybe that's just what I want to believe. Because I wasn't alone in my travels, the feeling that I was being watched by someone was true. It only revealed itself after I opened the door to the 999th store. The place was totally different. There was no entrance with glass walls that were meant to show the exterior. There were no carts, no lights emitting shadow, and no products in the dozens upon dozens of bunkers that were now in front of me, spread 6 feet apart, were these massive, empty, rectangular black metal and plastic bunkers with shadow light bulbs casting darkness over them. The first row had 9 bunkers, as did the second, the third, the fourth, and so on, until the 111th row. All of them were illuminated by the inverted glow of the glossy floor. I looked at my zebra, and it pointed forward, before finally losing all of its battery. The walk was long. My eyes played tricks on me as I stared at the many abysses that surrounded me. I could swear that I saw woeful faces, desperate ones. I was screaming in my head to turn back now before something happens. Looking back, I don't know why I was really panicking. It should have occurred to me that it was too late. After another set of hours walking to the 111th set of 9 bunkers, I stared at the bunker on the left. Each of them had been labeled with a number, and 999 was the 999th bunker. From the abyss of the darkness projected over it, something long emerged. It was like my hand, only thinner, paler, and with long, strange fingers. As those fingers tried to wrap themselves around me, I finally did what I should have done at the first bunker: run. I ran away as fast as I could, faster than I had ever run before. I did not care if my zebra fell out of my pocket. I did not care if I escaped and died from the beast that tried to capture me. I did not care if I had lost time with my friends and family. I burst out of the door and crashed into someone entering. I hit the ground hard, feeling the friction of concrete scrape off skin. I was surprised at the sensation, and as I regathered my senses, I realized that I was outside the store. But it wasn't the grocery store I remembered. The logo was green rather than blue, and the clothes of the person I had bumped into were totally different. After I apologized, I asked him the oddest question he must have heard that day. "Can you tell me what today's date is?" Are you all right?" His accent sounded almost like a regular American one, but something was off about it. "Yeah, just tell me the date." "August 30th. What year?" "3024. That's 999 years after 2025. I had traveled 999 years after 2025, and I lost all time with my friends, family, and any future that I would want with them. I was in an alien future now, which makes you wonder how you're reading this, right? Well, time fluctuates in what Gabriella calls the 999 stores, and because we got Wi-Fi at the real store, we got it here too. Cosmic Wi-Fi, as I like to joke. So as I'm uploading this post, here, I hope that it at least reaches my friends and family. I just want to say to them that I am so sorry. I wish we could spend more time together. That's all I've ever wanted with any of you. The time that we have now and forever lost with each other. I know you guys will be able to move on without me. So please don't come looking for me. I've got food and shelter in the 999 stores. Entertainment too. It won't be as fun without any of you here. Just please don't come looking for me. Please don't find me. Don't make my mistake of coming here. There is nothing to find here except lost time. And the same goes for any future worker at a grocery store, because it doesn't just apply to the one where I work. Every store has a 999th bunker, and it's the same one. So, listen to me when I say, don't fucking go and find the 999th bunker, and if you do and meet me, I will drag you out myself. Story number 3. I'm saying this because I don't know what else to do. I feel so exhausted. I can't think straight anymore. I'm an international student. I won't say my name or what country, because I already feel unsafe, but my family is thousands of miles away, and I don't have close friends, especially now. Most of my days are just classes, the library, and then back to my room. Back in March this year, I matched with a guy on a dating app. He seemed very nice at first, slightly pushy, but funny. I was so lonely here, I just wanted to talk to someone badly. After a week or so, I gave him my Instagram. That was my mistake. At the start, it was all casual. He was liking my photos, always telling me how smart I was and what a pretty girl I am. It flattered me a lot, especially because it's been so difficult to befriend anyone here. I've always had this alien feeling in this country. He was sending memes and random stuff, the kind of stuff normal people do when they're chatting, I think. Then he started asking to meet, and was really pressing on it. But it was right when I was preparing for my midterms, so I told him I was busy, and maybe we could plan a date later. But he kept pushing. He started calling me through Instagram, sending, when I didn't reply. Then he started sending a bunch of nudes. I told him to stop, that he was acting like a weirdo. He wrote back, "Don't piss me off, bitch." Blocked him immediately. The next day, I got messages from a new account. Same pictures, same tone. I blocked that one too. Then another popped up, and another. It was endless. I'd block one, and within minutes another would text me. Then he started reposting my own photos on these accounts, with captions like, "College who?" and "An easy bit." Some of my classmates even saw it, because he was tagging them all over. I was going crazy. And then there was the moment when I truly panicked. I kept receiving photos of myself at the bus stop. literally that same day. Then another of me in the college library. I understood it wasn't just some game anymore. I was panicking so much, so I went straight to the police for the first time. The officer was patient about all of it, which honestly irritated me the most. He looked through my screenshots, the account usernames, the dating app chat. He explained that it was stalking and harassment, and said he'd log it. He told me to keep documenting everything and even suggested applying for a protection order. The issue was, they couldn't identify him. Throwaway accounts, app numbers, no name, no address. Even the photos from the dating app looked like they were just pulled from the internet. I felt so stupid in that moment, almost crying while he spoke. Without something concrete, there was nothing they could serve. He told me to call if I ever felt unsafe in the moment, and they'd send someone. I left with a case number, and it felt like a piece of paper against a hurricane. For weeks I kept saving everything. All the accounts, all the numbers, call logs, screenshots, but the messages kept coming. Somehow, he got my new number. Texts like, "Cute jacket," right after I'd leave class. Calls at night from different numbers. If I answered, it was just breathing. Once, a whisper of my name. I went back to the police again. This time, I was screaming and crying because for weeks, I'd just been slipping further into madness. They updated the report, told me they'd escalate it to cybercrime or something. They said they'd request patrols near my dorm. It didn't help me sleep. By May, I was failing classes. I couldn't focus. Every buzz on my phone made me nauseous. I stopped talking to people. I didn't want to tell my parents because I knew they'd tell me to come back home, and this was my dream school. I just couldn't mess it all up like this. I felt completely alone, but at the same time, so constantly watched. By June, I broke. I moved out of the dorm into a small single flat. Further away, I told housing it was for safety reasons, and they expedited it. I trashed my phone and bought a second-hand one off some marketplace. New SIM, new number. I deleted every account, stopped using social media altogether, changed my routes to campus, wore different clothes, kept my head down under my hood, and for these months, it actually worked. There was silence. No calls, no texts, no new accounts. I thought maybe I'd finally gotten free. 2 nights ago, that ended. I woke up to buzzing around 1 a.m. My new phone was lying on the nightstand, screen lit, already open to the gallery. There were hundreds of photos, all of me. Not selfies, not screenshots. Real photos. Me at the bus stop with my headphones in. Me getting groceries. Me sitting in the laundromat reading. Different clothes. Different days. Some from just weeks ago. Every single one taken from outside. From a corner, a doorway, or through a window. No selfies, no inside shots. Just me, going about my life, as if someone had been following me every single day with a camera. I stared until my eyes blurred with tears. My chest felt hollow. I don't remember deciding to move, but suddenly I was already on my feet, throwing the phone against the wall. The screen got all cracked. I shoved it into a trash bag and carried it all the way to a dumpster down the road. I was shaking so hard I thought my knees would give out. The next morning, I went straight to the police again. I told the officer everything. About the hidden folder, the photos, and how I'd thrown the phone away. He asked for the device, and I told him I panicked and got rid of it. I thought he'd be angry, but he just sighed and said that made it harder to analyze. He still took the full report, wrote everything down, said he'd escalate it to the cyber unit and request additional CCTV checks. He asked about my new flat, wrote down the building name, my unit number, asked about my schedule, when I usually left for campus, when I came back, and so on, so the patrol could time their checks. He was so calm about all of it, even told me not to feel bad about breaking the phone, that panic was normal. When I was leaving, he asked if housing had given me spare keys. I said yes, one set. He said if I wanted patrols to do checks while I was in classes, I could drop the spare off at the station. So I did. I walked out feeling slightly lighter, like maybe I wasn't completely alone anymore. This night, I locked my door, checked the windows twice, and left the lights on. Just to feel safer, I dragged the chair and wedged it under the handle. I couldn't sleep. My body was humming with adrenaline, but sometime past midnight, exhaustion finally pulled me under. Then I woke to a sound, buzzing. On my nightstand, the same phone, cracked screen, open to the gallery, same folder. At the bottom, a new photo, me asleep, taken from the corner of my bedroom. I dropped it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I checked the locks again. Perfect. Checked the windows, latched, and then my stomach dropped. The chair wasn't at the door anymore. It was back by the table, exactly where it had been before I moved it. So either I dreamed moving it, or someone put it back. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I'm losing my mind. It was only outside photos before. Now it's inside my room. I called the police. I couldn't think of anything else. But as soon as I hung up, the thought hit me. The only people who know where I live are housing and the officer, and he has my spare keys. The phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I know what's there. Then the knocking started. Slow, heavy. A voice on the other side. It's just the police. Open up. I don't know if I should open the door. Story number 4. I can't tell this story to anyone, but I need to get it off my chest, so I will write it here. Names have been changed. It all started in 1996. My parents had just bought our first home computer, one of those bulky machines that sat in the living room for the whole family to use. On the rare occasions when my parents weren't around, I would turn it on and scour the internet for things little children aren't supposed to mess with. One afternoon, my dad was at work, and my mom ran to the shop, leaving me home alone. For just a few minutes, I typed www death into the search bar. I often made up creepy website names. I was a curious child, and I wanted to educate myself on the things adults were afraid to talk about. The website that popped up was a gloomy page featuring the drawing of a skeleton in a black cape. It read, "Do you want to know when you will die?" It prompted me to enter my name and date of birth. I did, then clicked on Submit. As soon as a new window opened, I instinctively closed my eyes. Did I really want to know when I would die? No, I didn't. Did I believe that a scary website could actually know the date of my death? No, I didn't. But you never know. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard Mom's keys turning in the lock. Mom would be furious if she knew what I was up to. She thought I only dealt in stuffed animals and Disney princesses. I grabbed the mouse and darted toward the little X in the top right corner of the window. In the process, I stole a quick, furtive glance, a tiny glance. But I saw it all right. August 21st, 2022, at 12:05 a.m. In the years that followed, I lived my life without ever thinking about that stupid website again. Did I, though? August 21st, 2022, at 12:05 a.m. August 21st, 2022, at 12:05 a.m. August 21st, 2022, at 12:05 a.m. That date was burned into the back of my mind. It sat there like a relentless ticking clock I never dared to speak of. It only left me with 26 years, which doesn't sound too bad, but it really isn't that much when you think about it. Although I would never allow myself to acknowledge it, I rushed to achieve my goals because I secretly feared time was running out. I wrote like crazy throughout my 20s until I managed to publish a novel. It sold decently well. Seeing my creation on library shelves helped some of the anxiety subside. At least I had made my mark in the world. A small mark. I needed to keep going to make it bigger. I wrote another novel that I was convinced would become my masterpiece. It was rejected by every single editor. I had never felt so hopelessly crushed. One night, in the midst of a panic attack, I opened my laptop and went back to that website. I landed on a gray, empty page. All it said was, "This domain name is for sale." Relief rushed through me. This whole death prediction thing was a hoax from the early days of the internet, meant to attract traffic from credulous children like me. Obviously, afterwards I developed a more relaxed disposition, but only to an extent. I still had a lot of work to do on my way to greatness, and I'd better not procrastinate. I married Tim on a bright summer day. From the moment I met him, I knew he was the one. Sweet, dependable, down to earth. As a tax accountant, he had a comfortable paycheck, great benefits, and a solid life insurance policy. Sure, he wasn't the most adventurous man in the world, but who cared? He believed in me and was happy to support me while I poured my time into my literary endeavors. August 20th, 2022 came around. You may ignore the passing of time all you want. Tell yourself that a certain day is still far off. But that day will come. Oh yes, it will. I pretended that there was nothing special about August 20th, 2022. Still, I took some precautions. In the weeks prior, I'd put myself through a battery of medical checkups. Not that I had any symptoms. Indeed, the doctors confirmed that I was healthy as a horse. Even though August 20th was a Saturday night, I made no plans. I sat in front of the television and did not budge. Tim went upstairs at 10 p.m. He always went to bed early. I wished I could join him, but for some reason I absolutely had to finish binge-watching some meaningless Netflix show. August 21st, 2022, at 12:05 a.m. What if I die in my sleep? At 11:31 p.m., I started feeling a tingling in my nails. I wiggled my fingers. It went away. A few minutes later, it came back. As any sane person would do, I pulled out my iPhone and Googled it. None of the medical conditions associated with nail tingling could possibly apply to me. As I had already established beyond a reasonable doubt, There was nothing wrong with my body. The only condition that did match was anxiety disorder. It was 11:40 p.m. on August 20th, 2022, and I had to face it. I was really anxious to go on that website again. My fingers flew across the touch keyboard, hoping to land on this domain name is for sale. I crashed back into that old web page from 1996, but this time the caped skeleton was pointing at a real-time clock, 11:44:01 p.m., 11:44:02 p.m., 11:44:03 p.m. The room started spinning. The ground gave way beneath my feet. What kind of sick joke was this? That website was supposed to be down. How did it recognize me from 26 years ago? I didn't use the same Google account. Google accounts didn't even exist in 1996. Wait, I wasn't being rational. What the screen was showing me was just a real-time clock. There was no actual piece of information tied to me. Most likely, the original creators of the website had bought back the domain name and decided to play a prank on anyone who had been on it back in the day. Sooner or later, someone would go on the website at an unfortunate time and get scared out of their mind. Why won't this tingling stop? I tossed my phone on the couch and went back to watching TV. I refused to be intimidated by such nonsense, but I could not understand anything the characters on the screen were saying. I glanced at my nails. They looked a bit dark. Had they always looked this way? Almost without thinking, my hand grabbed the phone again. I checked the timer, 11:48:05 p.m. So what? I told myself. This is a night like any other night. It will pass, and the sun will rise, and the darkness will be forgotten. Drain shot up from the couch. What was that? The doorbell. Just the doorbell. Our house was pretty isolated, but every now and then bored teenagers would bike out to the edge of town and ring random doorbells for kicks. I looked through the peephole. Just the dark, empty street. I unlocked the door. Maybe I could catch them, give them a good scolding. As I pushed the door open, a gust of icy wind slithered inside, engulfing me in cold, lonely despair. I slammed the door shut and backed away into the warmth of my home. Dreen again. Go away, I shouted. I strained to hear anything outside. Nothing. No giggling, no footsteps, no bike wheels turning. Just dead silence. August 21st, 2022, at 12:05, I looked through the peephole. I screamed, but the scream didn't come out. It turned inward, digging into my lungs, as I stood there breathless, my mouth agape, like the corpse of a hanging man. Outside my door was the skeleton in a black cape, its unnatural grin and hollow eyes boring into me through the peephole. Scrambled back to the couch, snatched up my phone, dialed 911 and started jabbering. Help! Someone at my door, trying to get in. Help! They want to hurt me. Then I realized that the call hadn't gone through. I had no reception, 0 bars. In fact, the reception symbol was gone altogether. Suddenly the phone fell from my hands. I had finally noticed it. My nails, black, broken, rotten. August 21st, 2022. At 12:05 a.m. it was real. It had always been real. I lunged at my phone. Thankfully, it was still intact. I opened the browser and went back to the website. 11:54:58 p.m. Dratum. My heart jumped into my throat. It tasted like blood. Minutes to go. Took a deep, trembling breath. I was a smart woman. There had to be something I could do to save myself. Every problem has a solution, doesn't it? I brought my phone closer to my face, scanning every inch of the web page, looking for a clue, a loophole, some guidance from the devil himself. There it was. At the very bottom of the page, almost invisible. Contact. I slammed my thumb down. A chat window popped up. Sleepy friend. Hi, Suzanne. It knew my name. At this point, I wasn't even surprised. Sleepy friend. Congratulations on your upcoming death. How can we help today? Me. I don't want to die. Sleepy friend. How can we help today? Me. I don't want to die. Please make it go away. Sleepy friend is typing. My eyes snapped to the timer. 11:58. 31 p.m. Come on. I had no time to waste. Sleepy friend. We understand that you requested a personal death prediction on October 13th, 1996. We are proud to say our predictions are 100% accurate. Me, I don't care. I don't want Tootie. Sleepy friend, we understand that you requested a personal death prediction on June 13th, 1996. Me, it was a mistake. Sleepy friend is typing. 12 o'clock M, 12 o'clock and 1 second. AM 12 o'clock and 2 seconds AM. My limbs were curling up, tightening into a sort of rigor mortis. Sleepy friend. I see. Don't worry, Suzanne. All mortals make mistakes. We proudly implement a near unlimited satisfaction guarantee. My body relaxed a little bit. Maybe there was a way out of this. Nightmare. Me, so I'm not gonna die. Is the monster going away? Sleepy friend is typing. 12:02 and 10 seconds AM. Me. Am I safe or not? Sleepy friend. However, since our operator has already reached your address and the scheduled pickup is less than 3 minutes away, it is against company policy to send him back without a retrieval. Me, what does that mean? You said satisfaction guarantee. 12:03 and 2 seconds AM. Sleepy friend. We are happy to accommodate our customers in any way we can. You are welcome to enter the personal information of an alternative subject. First name, last name, date of birth. Me. What do you mean? Sleepy friend. Our operator has already reached your address. It is against company policy to send him back without a retrieval. You are welcome to enter the personal information of an alternative subject. First name, last name, date of birth. I tried to swallow, but my saliva had thickened into gravel. He was content with his life. He had lived a good life. Would growing old and sick make him any happier? Probably not. Sure, he was a competent tax accountant. There were thousands others like him. Did the world need more tax filings from him specifically? Not really. 12:04 and 23 seconds AM. I, on the other hand, had important work to do. I was creative. I was unique. My new novel was coming along nicely. It just needed time to mature. Time. 12:04 and 51 seconds AM. I brutally silenced my thoughts. Like a machine, I typed hard and fast. Tim's first name, middle name, last name, Date of birth, 12:05 a.m. I held my breath, eyes fixed on the front door, waiting for the horror to come through. Dingy jumped. It wasn't the doorbell, just a notification. Sleepy Friend had responded. Sleepy Friend, thank you, Suzanne. The team wishes you a long and happy life. Sleepy Friend has exited the chat. That was it. The timer ticked on peacefully. 12:05 and 59 seconds a.m. 12:06 a.m. 12:06 and 1 second a.m. And I was still alive. I looked down at my nails. To my immense relief, they looked perfectly normal. The thought occurred to me that perhaps they had always looked normal. Maybe the fear, bottled up for 26 years, had made me hallucinate. With newly found courage, I walked to the front door and peered through the peephole. Only the empty street. For the first time that night, I suddenly felt clear-minded. It was like I had just woken from a bad dream into an ordinary, reassuring reality. It had all been an elaborate prank, and a very tasteless one at that. I didn't know how they pulled it off, but after a good night's sleep, I would figure it out. Swooshes. I turned around. The hairs at the back of my neck stood up. The caped figure was gliding down the stairs behind me. Its bony grin flashed in the dim light. My legs were two pillars of stone. I stood still as the figure breezed right past me. The front door swung open in its wake. The figure blended into the night. In the blink of an eye, the door was closed again. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. I did not bother checking the bedroom. I knew what I would find. I buried my husband Tim 3 years ago. He died of a heart attack. Surprising for a man in his 30s, but not so surprising considering both his father and uncle suffered from heart problems. He is sorely missed. As the wonderful provider that he was, he left me with enough money to support myself while I write full-time. I still haven't finished my masterpiece. I am so damn close. But something always holds me back. Some days, I can't focus on my manuscript for more than a few seconds at a time. I keep thinking that I might be about to die, and the panic makes my brain go haywire. Other days, I simply stare at the wall, drenched in the weight of this never-ending existence. I think the uncertainty is killing me. Maybe if I knew what to expect, maybe then I would feel motivated again. I did check the website. It looks exactly as it did in 1996. Do you want to know when you will die? First name, last name, date of birth. Enter should I do it? Story number 5. That night provided no distinction between itself and 100 others, and yet, to this very hour, it is the one that bewilders me the most. My earliest recollection of this night, already stained by the visions we call nightmares. It had since occurred to me that these very visions were the root of what others, with a kind of pity, call my fascination with horror. They insist, of course, that the indulgence in the dreadful had given rise to the dreams. But the truth, I think, is quite the reverse. As long before I had encountered a tale of horror, my nights were filled with them, vivid and entire, such that I touched, felt, and suffered through them, as though they were the very texture of reality. What later passed for horror in plays and books was, to me, the language to articulate what I had already known. The dreams, in their ceaseless recurrence, held less the quality of terror, but more so of desolation. For although fear was its shadow, it seemed loneliness, untamed, oppressing, intense, was its true substance. That particular vision, as I recall, arrived with the same melancholy in which the night itself had shrouded me in. And it was under that veil that I first became aware of a voice. It was a man's voice. Deliberate, articulate. He seemed to say less than he knew, and as he threaded through my mind, my vision fractured into two planes of perspective. The dim, humid air of the dream, and flickering against it, a vision, like from a scene from an uncanny chronicle. There was a mother, solitary mother, and a child, a little girl radiant, with all the charm of innocence. The voice endowed their figures with a tenderness so complete that I might have mistaken it for love itself. The child, obedient, mirthful, inquisitive, and the mother, exalted in that devotion, that which the little one had become, beyond dispute, the absolute center of her world. The dream drew on. The voice continued, with brevity, calculation, and a darkness such that I dared not name. And with it, my unease grew, cold, precise, insistent. I recall the little girl, her cheer, her inquisitions, the charm that drew me in despite myself. Her mother, all pride and delight in the radiant company of her child, their tender exchanges unfolding as though staged for me alone. Yet beneath it all, a tension grew, thick, dreadful, unspoken. I remember the moment the child's light faltered, her sweetness slipping away as suddenly as a candle snuffed. That charm that had secured my affection was gone, and with it, a silence fell. The mother, steadfast and loving, showed no notice of the change. The voice observed this too, with cold insistence. And then, most dreadfully, I saw her, the mother herself. What had once been beauty, poise, the unmistakable grace of a woman well kept, collapsed before me into something hollow, unwell. She had become, in an instant, the shell of her former self. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and my disquiet thickened into a terror I could neither name nor escape. The mother's mind was, by then, most certainly gone. I saw it in the restless way she moved about her child, in her speech and gestures that carried no sense, only fragments. Yet what I beheld was never wholly clear to me, never certain. It was like watching a puzzle with pieces missing, though the pieces lay scattered before my very eyes, hidden only by some refusal of sight. She believed her daughter looked like this. The little girl appeared again, familiar, radiant, almost celestial, like one of Raphael's own angels. But she really looked like this. And with those words, the glow collapsed into shadow, into a depth without end, darkness, abyssal, and all-consuming. I awoke in a dark room. The love of my life lay peacefully beside me, her breathing steady, untroubled, yet the air around me was not my own. I felt a presence in that darkness, as though I had risen into company I had never invited. My eyes fought their way back to focus, dragging open at a snail's pace. The blackness thickened into a fog, swallowing the corners, softening the shapes, leaving me helpless to search it fully. My body, too, betrayed me. Still as stone, it would not obey the simplest command. I lay there, bound to the bed, listening to her quiet sleep while something else, unseen, unspoken, lingered close in the dark. I recall at the border of my vision, the black veil of darkness slowly was undone, and hidden beneath lay a small figure, stiff like a mannequin. The black fog dissipated more and more and revealed more of my unwelcomed guest. Even as I recount the events, I can't help but feel unsteady, for what she really looked like was truly horrid. I remember her skin, which rippled and moved, as though alive, her eyes vacant, but even so, felt horribly watchful and perceptive. The events of that night had gone on for longer than one night, and my interaction with this unwelcome guest stirred something truly more haunting than any of the so-called horrors. It had stirred an unhealthy connection to a girl who had known nothing but love and devotion in life, and now sought it even after I was staring out my window beyond the trees and the night's darkness that shrouded them. I saw her once more, and with vacant eyes she had seen me as well. Story number 6. At this point, I'm not sure where else to turn. If anyone has any ideas on how to help me, please reply. It's been 2 weeks since my last good night's sleep. I don't know why, but every night I have horrible nightmares of watching my mother die. My mother is not sick, nor is she in some kind of danger, as far as I know, and I do not carry any resentment towards my mother. She is one of my best friends, and I would do anything for her, but these dreams persist. Every time it's something different. A car crash, heart attack, falling from a 10-story building, and the worst ones, some crazed psychopath killing or violating her in various ways that I'd prefer not to think about. Tracing back my steps, it seems that this all started when I moved into a new apartment. I actually moved back home to Kansas City to be closer to my mother and father, but with how the past 2 weeks have been, I'm starting to regret it. The place I moved into is a small, old building that looks like it was built around the turn of the century. That old red brick that I loved so much as a child now encases me. The electricity is also pretty shoddy. Lights flicker often, and when they do work properly, there is a constant buzzing that sounds just too loud for comfort. The building has a horrible reception, and the internet is practically non-existent. But this is what I could afford right now. One night I woke up from a rather disgusting scene of my mother being strung up on a light pole, and what sounded like whistling, but it didn't sound like a well-formed whistle. It has a very shrill, distorted tone, as if someone were trying to whistle while inhaling. If you try to speak while inhaling, you get that very distorted sound that doesn't sound quite human. Imagine that, but for a whistle. It sounded like it was coming from the bathroom. Considering how old the building was, I assumed it was just some weird noise from the plumbing and tried to go back to bed. When I woke up the following morning, I walked into the bathroom to relieve myself and found an odd sight. The mirror was completely fogged over. It appears that the shower had been running for a while, but no one else lived in my apartment, and there was no other evidence that the water had been running. I wondered if the noise I'd heard last night was water running, but that didn't explain why the mirror was still fogged up. I quickly grabbed my Glock G19, checked the magazine, and ensured a round was in the chamber before clearing the apartment. Once I was satisfied there was no one in the apartment, I continued on with my day, trying to forget the strange events of the night before and that morning. Last night I had the worst nightmare yet. I won't go into too many of the gory details, but in short, I dreamt that a man dressed in some BDSM-style leathers was mutilating my mother and cutting her open while she was still alive. I woke up from this in the middle of the night, halfway through the dream. I'm not sure what time it was, but the only light in the room came from the digital clock on the bedside table and the moon shining through the curtains. I wake up silently, screaming for it to stop. The only sound coming from me, a choked gasp for air, as I realized I was in the realm of the living again. It may have just been a trick from the light, and me being on edge from the nightmares. But at the edge of my bed, I swear I saw a short, pale, humanoid creature. It appeared to have frail, thin limbs that were too long for its small body. Its head was misshapen, too long, too thin, and its eyes were just dark pinpricks. It was making the same inhaled whistle sound I heard from the previous night. I blinked, and it vanished. Since that night, I haven't slept. I'm going on 54 hours without sleep now. I can't keep having these dreams, and I'm convinced that that thing is what's causing them. That insidious whistle, I can't unhear it. I haven't seen it or heard the whistle since that night, but I know if I stay awake long enough, it will come back. Story number 7. How could it still walk when we had blown its brains out just days ago? The impossible thing that we came across in the forest, my cousin and I. He had just come back home from the military, and I was home from college for summer break. We had gone hunting. Then the thing appeared from an abandoned house that was never there before, as if it had been waiting there for someone, for us. Dressed in a tattered flannel shirt and jeans, the thing materialized from that dark place so unnaturally, like a mime on his 4th glass of wine, like a snake going through an aggressive seizure, the constant and relentless writhing of its arms that did not make sense in my head, the jerking of its joints, the neck twisting as if it were a crazed owl, the arms oscillating like stout pendulums. Its face was an indecisive mess. It was a forever-changing film reel of different people. I could only make out 4 of the many faces it presented itself to be. A woman, a little girl, an old man, and a dog. There was a strange bright cloud around its head as the face shifted and changed. It looked like a dream, but as it got closer to us, as it creeped its way through the bush and the sticks, without making a single noise, the weird thing's face began to focus. The golden mist about its head would slowly clear up, and the many faces would finally cease. In that moment, I was staring right back at myself. I don't know how long I stood there, watching myself wearing a confused and curious look. "Pretty, please, won't you let me in?" said the strange thing. I could feel my body tense up. I wanted to run, to scream, to vomit, but all I could do was stand there. Then it happened. A loud crackle broke the silence of the forest. The strange thing stopped, wriggling and writhing. It fell to the ground ever so softly. I turned to find my cousin holding his rifle upright. He had put a bullet between the thing's eyes. He looked at me. We never talk about this. Ever. 2 days later, when I had gotten back home from a night out with college friends, I opened the front door to find muddy prints near the entrance. They did not look human at first. They continued from the entrance and upstairs to the second floor. They went from looking like a strange animal's paw prints to small human feet. They stopped at my mother's door, and I opened that too. Nothing. No more prints. No lights shone in the room. There were noises coming from the kitchen, noises that only now began to ring out in the house. I ran frantically downstairs, and there she was, my mother in the kitchen cooking something in a pot. She turned her head and smiled. Her auburn hair fell from her face. Her face was a little too excited. "Hey, sweetie, how was your night out? Are your friends doing okay?" she asked me. I did not answer at first, only because I was shocked by seeing her. The woman who would never be cooking at this time of night. The woman who had been away from some work trip for a couple of days now. I stared at her, stunned and perplexed. "Yeah, they're doing okay." Her smile grew wider. "That's great, honey. I will be done with this in a few. You hungry?" "No, not really. I ate something at the bar. Thanks, though." "That's okay. If you start to feel hungry again later, it'll be here waiting for you." "Thanks, Mom." I walked away without looking back and went upstairs to my room. I didn't think about the smell of the food until later. How sweet and decaying it smelt. As if she threw together a soup of pungent, dead things. I went to bed with the light on and stared at the door until I finally drifted off to sleep. I did not eat dinner that night. The day after that, I visited my off-and-on-again boyfriend. He was honestly no good for me, but his touch, his intimacy, was all worth it. The way he kissed me as if I were the last boy on earth. The way he wrapped his arms around me. The way I traced my fingers along his skin, soaked in sweat from the summer humidity. I was a cartographer, his body, my map. We had made love for a long time. In the silence, the noise that was our passion. His kisses became more desperate, more aggressive. He kissed my neck, and for a split second, his mouth came up to my ear, and he whispered into it. "Why won't you let me in?" he asked. I didn't register what he said at first. My eyes were still closed, and his skin began to feel different, off. It became leathery and taut. He had opened his mouth over my neck and kept still. I could feel tiny hands grasping at my neck, my ear, tiny hands that might have come from his mouth. His breath was freezing cold, and I started to shiver. I could feel his own hands trying to claw into my skin, and without effort, they did. I could feel his own fingers converging into my arms, and then my muscles, then my bones. There was a soft groan coming from that gaping mouth, and yet I kept my eyes closed. I didn't want to open them, to see what creature had taken hold of me. But if I wanted it to end, I had no choice. I opened my eyes. My boyfriend's face had altered into something maniacal and mad, something so inhuman I could have lost my mind right then and there. I saw that wide, gaping mouth, that black hole of a mouth in which those tiny hands had sprung from. He wouldn't take his eyes off me. I yelled as loudly as I could. I pushed him off me and fell to the ground. "What the fuck? What's wrong? With you?" he asked me. I looked up to find a normal person in that bed. I was bewildered, completely fucking astonished. I didn't say anything more to him. I got up, got dressed, and left. I never stopped asking myself how that thing could still walk, how such a thing could blink in and out of existence, if it did at all. I had questioned my own sanity if I had experienced these things. And that moment in the forest messed me up forever. It wasn't until I was in the supermarket that I looked at the missing people's board. It wasn't until I recognized some of the faces among the missing. Their names were Sarah, Melanie, Samson, and his companion, Scout. A woman, a little girl, an old man, and a dog. It hit me like a freight train, the realization of the people I was staring at. Then the dreams started, the dreams in which I was lost in the forest, and before me was that strange, non-existent house. Every night was like that now, perpetually lost in that thick world, and that house trying to draw me in, with its power, its source, that many-faced creature. One day I called my cousin because I was done. I was tired of no longer feeling in control of my own reality, of losing trust in those close to me. I called my cousin, but he did not answer the phone. His father, my uncle, did, and I asked him where my cousin was. Uncle said that my cousin had gone off the deep end, and something snapped in him. He kept yelling about some monster he killed in the forest, but it continued to haunt him, to steal the bodies of everyone around him. He told me that my cousin left without saying anything. He'd taken his rifle with him, too, so I had gone back to that forest, to that place that unraveled my life. I went back hoping to find my cousin normal and unscathed, but I knew that was highly unlikely. As I trekked along the path, sharp, high-pitched screams bounced off the trees. I ran further up the path, past a winding road, and down the familiar hill we recently discovered. I expected to find the house down that hill. It was no longer there. All that was left of it was the door, as it continued to stand upright and unbothered by the elements. My cousin was also there, lying on the ground beside the door, his rifle beside him. I knelt down. He was panting like a sick dog, his eyes bulging out of his skull. "Hey, are you okay? What happened?" I asked him. It took a while for him to answer. "That thing. It wouldn't leave me alone. I came back here to find it again, to finish the job. I shot the fucker again, but it didn't fall like last time. It kept creeping towards me. I didn't know what else to do. It asked me to let it in, and I said, okay." I didn't know what to say. I stared at him and saw his face had become transparent, less solid, as if I were staring into a pool of water. His eyes were a different color than I had remembered. His voice was distant, like he had spoken to me on the other side of a vast, open tunnel. I didn't hesitate. I looked over and grabbed the rifle. I turned back, ready to fire, but my cousin was no longer on the ground. In the corner of my eye, the door opened with a creak and slammed shut. I stood up and ran for the door and banged on it. "No, give him back," I yelled repeatedly. "Please just let me in." But the door never opened again that night or any other night. Story number 8. Hi. This might be a bit long, but I feel like I need to tell someone about this. Looking back after everything that happened, I realized that my childhood was a bit different from most. And only now do I understand just how frightening and dangerous all of these situations really were. I was around 6 years old, so if I don't remember many details, I ask for your forgiveness. I'll try my best to explain everything as clearly as I can, and not make it as confusing as it was. I'm traveling while writing this, but when I get back, I'll clarify some doubts and talk to my mom to better understand everything that happened. Back to the story. I was around 6 years old, and my mom had taken my brother to the hospital because he had a high fever. It was probably related to the previous night when we had been playing in the park in the rain. This was one of the few times I stayed home alone. But my childlike mind didn't worry much. I just wanted to figure out what to do to pass the time. Mom had warned me several times not to leave the house while she was gone, and never under any circumstances to open the door for strangers. She also said she would call after a while to check on me and make sure everything was okay. She left in a hurry. It was around 9 a.m. when she went out, leaving me alone at home. I think I spent most of the time watching cartoons on TV, though I don't remember exactly. But after my mom's first call to check if I was okay, I was already really bored. Without my brother, we were a team and always went on little adventures together, and unable to go outside, the day felt slow and gray. I was in the kitchen, playing with my little cars, pushing them across the wooden floor, seeing how fast I could make them go. Then I noticed some movement outside, a sound coming from the backyard. The kitchen had a large glass door that led out to the backyard, a big yard, fully fenced, with a small wooded area behind it. Curious, I decided to see what it was. At that point, even the tiniest thing would have been the perfect excuse to break my boredom. The backyard was fairly large, but there wasn't much there, just grass that probably needed mowing, since my mom never had time for it. Slightly to the left stood a tree, not very tall, but it had been part of countless games, like climbing. On it hung a swing that my mom had finally installed for us after much insistence. Carved into the tree was a drawing of our family, me, my mom, and my brother. Above it were our initials and a heart. If the noise came from there weren't many places to hide. Behind the tree, it was hard to see from a distance, but once you noticed, it became clear. There was a pair of hands. I got scared, let out a terrified scream, and ran back inside toward the phone in the living room. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Finally, I called my mom. She would know how to handle this. For some reason, she didn't answer, no matter how many times I tried. Giving in to my curiosity, I peeked through the kitchen's glass door that looked out to the backyard. The kitchen was just past the living room, with no divider, only a fairly wide hallway. And then I saw him, a boy, leaning against the glass, staring at me, one hand raised in a wave. He looked about my age, maybe a little older, but not much. His blonde hair was messy, and his clothes were dirty and torn. The boy seemed to be calling me over, and I don't know what came over me, but I dropped the phone and walked toward him. I was still a little scared, trying not to get too close, partially hiding behind a chair. "What's your name?" I asked, but he didn't answer, giving only a neutral look. He kept beckoning me closer with his hand, but I kept bombarding him with questions. How did he get here? And what did he want? Ran through my mind, though there were many better questions I could have asked, like why his clothes were dirty and torn. But no matter what I said, he didn't respond. He didn't open his mouth, as if he couldn't. "Can you talk?" I asked, now more curious than scared. He confirmed my suspicion by shaking his head from side to side, giving me the information I needed. But what could a child who couldn't speak possibly want with me? I asked how he had gotten there, and he just shrugged, as if he didn't know either. I noticed he kept staring at the door handle, as if silently begging me to open it. But I couldn't. Just imagining how furious my mom would be if she found out made my heart race. He seemed to understand that I wouldn't let him in, so he started moving away, heading toward the swing. There he stayed, swaying back and forth, perhaps enjoying himself. I really need to go to the bathroom, but I didn't want to lose sight of him. I locked the door and ran to the bathroom, trying to buy time. When I came back, he was still there, now just sitting on the swing, looking a little sad. I felt sorry for him. Maybe he just wanted a friend. At least that's what I told myself. "Do you want me to push you?" I called from inside, but the boy didn't respond, not even glancing at me. I felt a little insulted. I was offering help, and he didn't even care. I opened the door and walked toward him, barefoot on the damp grass, repeating the question. This time, he looked back, but still didn't answer. He simply stared. His eyes followed me as I finally got close enough. "Do you want me to push you?" I asked again, a little annoyed, wanting a clear answer. All I got was a hesitant nod. So I pushed him. He gripped the rope tightly, eyes wide, and then he smiled. For a moment I forgot how strange the situation was. I was playing with a boy who had appeared in my backyard without even knowing his name. I noticed he had a slightly scraped knee, and his gray clothes, originally white, hid several marks. The one that caught my attention most was on his neck, sometimes covered by his long hair. For a moment I almost mistook him for a girl. A purple mark, whose origin I had no idea of, remained a mystery. Though it didn't really matter, since he couldn't talk. I set aside my curiosity, stopped the swing, and asked him to push me this time. He didn't hesitate, and did so willingly. From a distance, it looked like just two kids playing, but anyone aware of the context would find it unsettling. I spent some time there with him on the swing, lying on the grass and telling him some of the adventures I'd had with my brother. He seemed genuinely interested, but I couldn't ignore the nervousness etched on his face. It was strange. I heard the phone ring in the background. My mom was probably calling to check if I was okay. I started to get ready to go back inside, but he held me back. He seemed uneasy, scared, or afraid of something. He gestured as if begging for something, but no sound came out. Maybe he was afraid I would tell my mom about him, which made sense. With a lot of effort and careful miming, he suggested a game where we had to climb the tree. I was skilled at it, and he couldn't reach the top alone. We spent another 30 minutes there. I tried teaching him to climb, but after a few branches, he became too scared to continue. I had to show him how it was done, climbing almost the entire tree myself. From the top, I spotted my mom's car turning onto the street. She had arrived. I hid quickly. If she saw me there, I'd be in serious trouble. I'd been told countless times not to climb the tree, even if I claimed to be an expert. With the skills I had, I could probably have pursued a career in it. I climbed down and told my friend to hide until I could bring my mom inside. He nodded, still cautious, never taking his eyes off the house. I ran in and waited in the living room. When my mom came in, she seemed completely unaware of anything. She asked if everything was okay, and I joked that it couldn't be better. She walked toward the kitchen, then suddenly froze. Something had startled her. She ran back to the living room and stared at me. "Son, where is thee?" She was cut off by a loud crash. The kitchen door glass shattered. We ran to see what had happened, but my mom stopped me from going further because of all the glass shards. She went outside to check. I was afraid she'd find the boy, but apparently she didn't. My heart was racing as I tried to figure out what had happened, until I looked down. Among the shards lay a stone. As I stared at it, I heard a car screeching tires and speeding away in the distance. My mom heard it too and ran, crossing the house to try and spot the car, but it was gone. She took me out of the house and we waited together for the police, whom she had called. Poor my brother. He was still feeling unwell, sleeping in our mom's car, barely aware of what had happened. My mom told the police everything. They were looking for a suspicious-looking car. My friend was gone. I didn't tell her about the boy at the time, but later, when I mentioned him, her face turned pale with fear. She couldn't believe what I had said, and asked a question that still haunts me. "Were you with the boy in the backyard the whole time?" she asked. I told her basically, yes. I had spent most of the time with him, only coming back inside when she arrived. She paused, then took a deep breath. "Did you answer my call?" she asked, incredulous. I explained that I had missed it because the boy was afraid I'd tell about him. That was enough to make my mom go pale, and the three of us ended up spending the night at a relative's house. Only later did I learn what had happened. At first, nothing seemed out of place, but my mom noticed the kitchen knives were missing. Later, while the police were still there, she saw that all the bedrooms had been ransacked. Her question about the call wasn't random. I really hadn't answered the last one, yet she said someone had. The person hadn't said a word. First, she thought it was some joke I had played, but after seeing the state of the house, she realized the gravity of it all, and the reason we spent the night away was that our spare key was missing. Story number 9. I first noticed it when I moved into the apartment. Nothing unusual at first, just the usual creaks of a building that had stood since the 70s. But then I started to see them. Not exactly people, shadows. At first I thought I was imagining things. I'd walk into the living room after a long day, and out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch something flickering on the wall. A shape that shouldn't be there. But whenever I turned my head to look directly, it vanished. It started, subtly. The shadows in my apartment, my own, the furniture, the coat rack, began to move slightly on their own. A twitch here, a shiver there, as if they were breathing. Then, they started to change. It was the night I was looking at old family photos that I really noticed. The shadows on the walls behind me twisted and warped, forming figures I recognized. My sister, whom I hadn't seen in years. My father, who died when I was 16. They weren't quite right. their limbs too long, their heads tilted at impossible angles, but there was no mistaking their faces. And then I heard it. A whisper. Let me in. It hissed, low and dry, like leaves scraping concrete. I spun around, my heart pounding. My apartment was empty. Just me, the low hum of the fridge, the muffled traffic outside. My rational brain screamed that it was just my imagination, but the shadows didn't stop. In the following days, the whispers grew louder. Not always words, sometimes just soft murmurs, but always persistent. The shadows no longer just imitated people. They began to imitate me. The way I walked, the way I gestured when talking to myself. Sometimes they moved before me, as if learning me, practicing me. I stopped inviting people over. I stopped using my living room. I started sleeping on the sofa, in the dark, watching the shadows stretch and twist across the walls like liquid. The apartment had changed somehow. It wasn't just a place I lived. It was alive, and it was watching me. Then I noticed the cracks, small at first along the floorboards and baseboards, but they weren't cracks in the wood. They were cracks in me. I looked at myself in the mirror, and sometimes my reflection lagged a second behind my movements, as if it was trying to catch up. I'd reach for the faucet, and it would hang there in the mirror for a moment longer. My reflection began to tremble, almost imperceptibly, as if the mirror itself was a thin screen holding it back. And the whispers, they were patient, always patient. "Join us," they murmured. "It's warmer in the shadows. We can show you." I told myself I was going crazy. I started keeping a diary, writing everything down, hoping that if I documented it, I could prove to myself it wasn't real. But even as I wrote, I felt my words being pulled away, drained from my fingers. It was subtle at first, small omissions in sentences, missing letters, but I knew it wasn't my brain making mistakes. One night, it got worse. I woke with a weight on my chest. Shadows spread across the room, spilling from the corners like ink from a bottle. They pressed against me, whispering my name over and over, their voices merging into a cold, endless chant. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My body felt heavy, unreal, as if I were sinking into the mattress, the floor, into the shadows themselves. Then I saw her, my sister, but not my sister. Her shadowy form had wrong proportions, eyes too large, limbs too thin, and she smiled in a way I knew she never could. She leaned closer, and I felt her hand, cold, heavy, and empty, pressing mine. "You are ours now," she said. I woke the next morning on the floor, drenched in sweat, my body aching as if I'd been dragged across concrete. But the shadows persisted. Every corner of the apartment held a new figure, waiting, watching. I tried to leave. I really did. But when I reached the door, I froze. My shadow on the floor didn't follow me. It stayed behind, stretching unnaturally, merging with the others. And when I looked at my hand, I noticed the faint outline of my fingers disappearing, the edges blending into the darkness. That's when I understood what they wanted. I wasn't just being haunted. I was being consumed. Slowly. Every day. Every whispered word. Every night of suffocating darkness. They tore me apart. Enveloped me in themselves. I tried to fight back. I turned on all the lights, burned sage, played loud music, and threw water into the corners where the shadows gathered. It didn't matter. At night, they crept back, relentless. And with every encounter, I felt more of me disappearing. The first thing to vanish was my reflection. One morning I looked in the mirror and saw nothing but empty space behind my eyes. Then came my words. Speaking became harder. I would open my mouth, but sometimes no sound came out. By the time I realized the truth, it was almost too late. The shadows weren't just imitating me anymore. They had started to replace me. I would see a figure in the corner, my figure, but wrong, distorted, smiling with my face. It moved when I wasn't looking, practicing my life, preparing to step fully into my skin. And the more I resisted, the harder it pushed, faster, stronger, smarter. Last night, I made my final mistake. I spoke to it. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The shadows gathered, forming my sister again. Her distorted face gave me a malicious look. "Because it's afraid of the dark. Because everyone fears what they cannot control. But we are patient." Then she smiled, not with lips, but with the stretching of the shadows themselves. And I felt the last pieces of me give way. My arms, my legs, my face, all of me melting, folding into the darkness. Now I am almost among them, almost part of them, whispering to anyone who dares stay too long in the corners, waiting, learning, practicing. I'm saying this as fast as I can, before I become one of them. I need to warn you. If you ever see your shadow, moving differently than you remember, don't speak to it. Don't fight it. And whatever you do, don't look away. Because those who live in the shadow are patient. And if you hesitate, they will take you, piece by piece. I can feel you now, watching, waiting. The corners are hungry. The shadows are hungry. And soon, they will have you. Story number 10. There's something in here with me. I don't know exactly what it is, but I am certain I am not alone. I don't know how it got in. I locked all my doors and my windows are shut. I always check that before going to bed. So, logically, I should be the only one here. But I'm not. I'm certain I'm not, and it's not my dog. He's right beside me, asleep, like I was just a few minutes ago. But something woke me up. It wasn't a sound, but a feeling. Am I still asleep? Is this sleep paralysis? No, I can move. I sat up in my bed. I am wide awake and alert, but I don't know what has alerted me. All I know is that it's not nothing. There is something in here. Something. But I can't see it. The light switch is right there. I could flip it easily, but I'm frozen. My entire attention is consumed by what is in front of me. But all I see in front of me is darkness, emptiness, a void. I'm not usually scared of the dark. Well, not more than anyone else is, I'd say. So is it the dark that I am afraid of now? No, there's something in the dark, waiting. Do I see eyes? Eyes staring back at me. Do I see teeth, patiently waiting for me to close my eyes again, to strike when I'm most vulnerable? Do I hear the breath of something sinister? Does it smell wrong in here? I'm scanning all my senses for any kind of evidence to justify this feeling, and I'm coming back with nothing, so I should feel safe. But I don't. I want to call out to it. But what then? I have no weapon on me. I know I should have kept a knife or a gun or a bat or a flashlight or anything for nights like this. And maybe there have been nights like this where nothing has happened and there was nothing in the dark except my own creations. But this time feels different. I don't think there's something there. I know there's something there. I'm trying to explain it to myself, but I keep coming up short. I know I'm not making sense. Half of me thinks I'm wrong, but the other half knows I'm right. And knowing is stronger than thinking. But what is it? It's nothing. It's got to be nothing. The doors are locked. The windows are sealed. My dog hasn't been alerted, and I'm just fucking crazy. Except my dog just woke up. He turned his head to where I've been looking for the past hour, and he's locked to it. His ears are up, and they are pointed away from me. He is still. I knew I wasn't crazy. He sees something that I can't see, but he's not moving too. I wish he'd just bark or chase it, so that whatever is in this room with us would scurry out, and this would be over, and I could go back to sleep. But now I know that something is out there. I already knew it too, and he knows it now too. And whatever it is, it's something that has him frozen too. Is he scared like me? What could scare him like this? What could scare me like this? Fuck, what do I do? If I reach for my phone, it could get to me before I even dial the first number. If I reach for the light, it could tear me to shreds with its teeth. If I make a move, it will certainly get to Emma, and I would be dead. But I have to do something. Fuck. I have to do something. I steel my resolve. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna turn on the lights. Fuck this game of cat and mouse, and fuck whatever is in the room with me. I can't take not knowing anymore. I can't take waiting. Nothing is worse than waiting. Anything is better than not moving. Going for the light is better than not breathing. The sounds I make leaning over to the switch are better than this sickening silence. The creak of the mattress is like an explosion, but it is better than the empty space between me and whatever my fate shall be. Waiting didn't help me. Thinking about it only made it worse. So what else is there besides action? I start the chain. Reaction. My fingers are the first to come to life. They hurt as they creak to life. I move my arm. It is the heaviest it has ever been. I breathe in. How long has it been since my last breath? My back stretches at an awkward angle towards the light switch. It is so much further away than I remember it being. Sweat beads on my forehead. I can taste the air. My dog's ears twitch to the sound of my body gliding against the sheets. His gaze is still locked forward. I can hear my own heart. Every beat takes forever. My fingertips touch cold plastic. I have arrived. My entire body hesitates. I pull the switch. I knew it. I fucking knew it. There's something in here with me. You survived, for now. But the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.